morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are tuning in from, or if you are catching us on replay. This is The Awesome Journey, and I am your host, Kelle 𝒂𝒆𝒏𝒆𝒚, along with my co-host and care, Christy Howard. And you guys, today's Awesome Journey is a return guest who, honest to goodness, I was actually really shocked when I thought about this. It is Mr. Bob Hamer, who is a retired undercover FBI agent, best-selling author, and we are going to get into so many things, but Bob was our second guest, which has been almost 60. This is the 60th episode. So it was kind of shocking to me when I looked at that to think that far back. And I remember after the episode, one, I was nervous because I was like, oh, I got to be sure I get all this information right because I have such respect for what he's done in his life. And Christy and I were still so new to this. And we joked afterwards going, girl, we set the bar so high having Bob Hamer on episode 2. But boy, have we been incredibly blessed over this last year of who we've met through other connections and wildly through the same place where Christy and I met also, through Brian Terry, and how that event has trickled into all of these other connections. So we're so blessed and so privileged to have Bob Hamer back with us today. And I'm sure he even noticed a little difference. Like, wow, look at you girls rocking an intro now. We've learned a few things, but we're still learning too. So thank you, man, for your service. Thank you so much for being here again today. We're so excited to talk about all that you've been having going on since last year, which is crazy. You've been doing all sorts of things, of course. But before we turn it over to Bob, and because Christy is a huge fan of Bob's books, I started Bob's book, The Last Undercover, when I was house sitting and dog sitting for Christy last year while she was in Asia. Incredible book. We'll share all the links to all the books that we discuss, anything else in the comments, as well as post promos. So do look out for that. And before we turn it over to Bob, I will turn it over to my co-host in care, Christy Howard.
Bob, you know I love you. You know I love your books. As I put on my post today, I grew up being grounded all the time because it's 70s. And so when I got grounded, I didn't mind it for the fact that I got to read. Now, I was not your typical girl because I liked my undercover, my spy, my military, all those kind of things. And here, look at this. I'm friends with all you all. And so, you know, I want to say it's about 13 years we've been connected, and just always the fact of what you've done. And if I just going to get everybody to go over to our YouTube and subscribe and look at our first episode of Bob, because you need to understand about him wanting to be in the CIA and the FBI and how he got the call and what his test was for the CIA.
Incredible.
And then go read his books because those books are about what he's gone through and what he's done. And he has co-authored with Oliver North. However, now, you know, being retired, his passion, just like Kelle and I are for our military, our first responders. And yeah, so Bob, tell us about the last few years. Well, because I don't think we got into the co-writing as much, because I know that you had a book a year ago, but you know, the wheelchairs for the basketball and just what we were talking behind the scenes.
Yeah. And maybe just before to do a little bit of an intro for those of you that don't know, just your, you know, because you served in the Marines and yeah, so give a little bit of your journey in a very condensed version, and then what you've been up to.
Yeah, thanks.
Good to be back. Congratulations on continued success with the program, with the podcast. Appreciate you having me back on. Yeah, I spent 4 years on active duty in the Marine Corps. Was not a very exciting career. I reluctantly admit I was a judge advocate. I was a lawyer. Had 150 trials, everything from unauthorized absence to murder. But what I found, I'm much older than both of you. I'm in that Perry Mason generation that I assume at some point during the trial, the guilty person comes running through the back door saying, I did it. And in my 150 trials and my 250 clients, they were all guilty. It was just a matter of whether the government good case. And it was never a whodunit. It wasn't Perry Mason. It was always his confession and this sort of stuff. And I was looking for something a heck of a lot more exciting than the FBI. I mean, than and the Marines needed lawyers. They wouldn't allow me to change my occupation specialty. Reading the lines this time, the officers, and I'm going. I went to and said, "Anybody you want to be a dad?" At the time, I was stationed at all of a sudden, I get a letter back saying, yes, report down to the federal building, 660 Front Street in San Diego. So I go down there, I go into this room. The room is empty except for 2 chairs. And down, kind of look around. This guy walks in and he's got a scar from ear to ear. And I am thinking, this is so cool. This guy, I mean, this guy's got to have stories. This is so much better than being a lawyer in court. And that first interview went well. Eventually, I was invited back to Washington, D.C. to begin the testing process. And this was long before 9/11. So I was told to not tell anybody what I was doing, pay cash for everything, and fly under an assumed name. I mean, back then you didn't even have to show a driver's license to get on the plane. I told the Marine Corps that I was taking a few days off. I told my wife I was heading back to DC for some meetings. She thought Marine Corps meetings. I go back there, I start the testing process, come back, I get another letter saying, come back round of interviews. They tell your wife, but nobody else what you're doing. So I came home and I said, Debbie, I got to tell you, we're going to be spies. This is what I've been doing these last 2 meetings. Then I went back for my final set of interviews and meetings, passed the polygraph, which is somewhat remarkable. But they'd given me a personality, and CIA was looking to export you from a 0 to a 10. A 0 could live on a deserted island. A 10 had to be constantly surrounded by people. I'm kind of assuming, I sort of outthought myself, but I thought they were looking for guys that they dropped behind enemy lines. He stayed there for 3 weeks. Then he shot the third world dictator and they extricated him by a helicopter. I finished up the test and answer the questions, and the psychologist comes and he looks at me and he goes, I've never seen a 0 personality. And this day reminds me that I'm apparently the only person with a 0 personality by the federal government. The CIA passed, but in the meantime, I applied to the FBI. I did the oral exam, the written exam. I was doing extremely well, but there was a 1-year hiring freeze. Now I'm getting out of the Marine Corps. Friday is my last day. It's Monday night. This is the exact prayer. I'm not going to fluff it up for the podcast, but I just said, CIA had passed. The FBI had said that there was a hiring freeze. I had taken a job in LA. I turned on my 0 personalities. People hired me, but to this day, I can't really tell you what the job was. It wasn't exciting. And that night I prayed and I said, God, we tithe, you get more money if I take this job in LA, but I really wish that the CIA or the FBI would call. And the very next morning, the phone rang. My wife answered the phone. She says, it's for you. It's the FBI. They said, we just had somebody drop.
Don't forget to tell them where you were when you got that phone call.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was actually I was actually sitting on the John, and she knocked on the door and said, "It's for you." So I finished my paperwork and rushed to answer the phone. And they said,
Fabulous.
Can you be back in a month to Quantico, Virginia, to begin a career in the FBI? And to me, that was an answer to prayer. And throughout my next 26 years, I often reflected back that for some reason, God needed a zero personality in the FBI, and it worked out. It worked out well. So I had a great career.
Especially with your case, your cases that you had. Zero personality. I mean, what you've done.
I know.
There's more of the person, and I have my own opinions about CIA. The personality has to do with you. You might have zero personality, which we know you don't, but the creativeness to go into, weren't you like in West LA or South LA, where it was Hispanic and you're here a white guy, a drug dealer? Wasn't that the one?
Oh yeah, no, I worked the Crips and the Bloods, buying drugs from gang members. That was actually a funny story, but it was kind of the first two FBI agents to work street gangs. We were part of a squad, but we were the first two selected to go down and work gangs in South Central LA. And initially we were doing drug buys. Our initial roundup, we had 13 people that we had arrested. And the one guy had sold me drugs on 5 different occasions. And he was one of the top shot callers for one of the local sets. And I just said, hey, you had to suspect a white guy coming down here. And he shakes his head. So I talked with my homeboys, and we figured the police would be too stupid to send a white guy down here. So,
that's fair.
It's
oh my gosh,
I always when I talk to police groups, when I talk to undercover agents, when I speak at classes, I just say, if you are stupid, play stupid. And I really am stupid. So it was easy for me to play stupid and not try to bluff my way through a lot of different situations.
Well, obviously you're not that stupid.
Handy, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and no, you're not stupid, because boy, I mean, and I do want to encourage everyone. We'll share the links to the books, because Bob has done some incredible undercover work, from weapons trading, of course, selling drugs, buying drugs, the whole nine, infiltrating NAMBLA, which is the North American Man-Boy Lovers Association, if I'm not mistaken, which even just saying that makes me a little bit sick. Which y'all, Christy and I have had several conversations since Bob's been on, and we talked about that on the last episode. And again, we'll share that link also. Learning more about trafficking, but knowing how long ago that was, and infiltrating that group was a big deal. And just seeing how huge it is in today's world, because we've had so many conversations with, Craig Sawyer about child sex trafficking, with Linda Harlow, with Nick Lembo, coming up, Joe Lembo. And there's, the sex trafficking, human trafficking, and labor trafficking, which is just insane. But to think how far back NAMBLA was, and how you infiltrated that. And I do encourage everyone to check that story out, because it's incredible. And it is one of those, to me, that it's like, you do have a different level of intellect and definitely personality to be able to infiltrate with a group of folks that you find repulsive.
What year was that, Bob?
Well, it's interesting. I always say my favorite class in college was a course I took called Deviant Behavior. And I kind of joke now that I either arrested everybody we studied in that book, or I portrayed everybody we studied in that book. And I think if you talk to most law enforcement officers, especially those that don't work undercover, you kind of see the world in black and white. Either
Mm-hmm.
you violated the law or you didn't violate the law. And but as an undercover agent, you've got to see the gray. I mean, bad people, criminals are just like dogs. I mean, dogs can sense fear. Well, criminals can sense fear. They can sense hatred. And if you go into a situation just hating this person, hating what they do, man, that's going to come off. You're going to put off an aura that they're going to recognize, and they're going to know that something's wrong. So when I talk to younger agents, I say, look, find something that you can latch onto to that person and focus on that. Don't focus on the fact that he's a pedophile or he's this or he's that. Focus on the good characteristics. And it was sort of like even in NAMBLA. I mean, one of the guys that we convicted was a PhD psychologist that worked at 2 Chicago area hospitals. He was a funny guy. Now, he was disgusting when he talked about the boys that he had raped, the ages, what he had done. But you couldn't focus on that.
Right.
You had to focus on the fact that he was funny. One of the guys we convicted was a dentist. Actually, a pretty nice guy if you'd sit down and talk with him. But then when you would hear what his desires were, that was just sickening. So you focus on the good, not on the evil, and that's how you succeed as an undercover agent.
Dang. And you back then too.
Your faith is very strong.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. Big time, because that's what others have said. And knowing that the end goal is to catch these people.
Yeah. You have to look. It's sort of that old sociological concept of deferred gratification. You have to look not with the immediate, but look what's down the road, what you can get down the road. I mean, it's not the same thing, but it's kind of like you don't bust the guy immediately after he gives you a small amount of cocaine. You hope to follow him to see his. So it's that deferred gratification of sublimating your desire to, like in NAMBLA, sublimating your desire to kill him, to choke him out. That's not going to get you what you really need. But wait, be patient, and we'll make for a bigger investigation, more arrest, and do more damage to the boy lover agenda. So
is NAMBLA now completely done? I mean, we know people have infiltrated Hells. They're still around, but so are they still around? That would be called Hollywood. That would just be called
online
Hollywood.
presence. But they claim they don't use.
I'm sorry, what?
I said, I get kicked off of Facebook, but NAMBLA gets to exist.
Kelly's always getting kicked off of Facebook.
I don't know. They don't like positivity and faith, I guess.
Okay.
So tell about how you just decided to start writing. What made you just, and this was before ChatGPT, obviously, that you're just like, now we could all write a book. But how did you just say, I'm going to write a book?
That I had done a little bit of writing. I did in college. It wasn't like I took creative writing or I sought to be a writer or an author or anything like that. I did a little bit of writing. I spent most of my career in Los Angeles, so I met people in Hollywood, and a couple people suggested, oh, you should write a script for a movie about some of your experiences. And so initially I wrote a script, and it got optioned. It was never made into a movie. But then after I retired, I was at my brother's house at a Christmas party and ran into an agent who represented Rick Warren on The Purpose Driven Life.
Mm-hmm.
And
he used to go to his church.
My brother introduced me to Bucky, he's talking to my brother because my brother, he's got a career of work and all of that. So we started talking. I told him to expose NAMBLA and the boy lover agenda. And I'm not really interested in pounding my chest and saying, oh, look like my undercover type of deal. But I wanted to expose, start writing a book and we'll see where we go from there. That's how I in that evolved into so that first book sort of came out of that meeting. Interestingly enough, what happened was we finished the book. He starts submitting it, at least based upon his experience. Publishers are going to all over this. I mean, at that time, you had Law and Order SVU, you had Predator. It seemed like such a hot topic. And he said, we're going to have a bidding war. Well, within about 2 weeks, we had 24 rejection letters saying, some of them that I really like. The guy said, I read your fascinating topic. You're a good author. We'll never publish it. I was like, oh boy, that's praise. So, but
Thanks.
We had two hey, look, if you throw in more undercover stories to break up the NAMBLA stuff, we would consider it. Definitely threw in a dozen other cases in which I was the contract killer or the drug dealer.
Interesting.
Do you think, well, that's another story. I'm just curious is if it was just NAMBLA that because it's always been what it's now blown up to be. Like now it's so public of how the
but it's still so quiet.
Pedophile. Yeah. No. Yeah. So now how did you connect with Oliver North?
Yeah. How did that start?
Did he just freeze?
Oh, yeah.
Nope. Yep. He's good.
Yeah. I'm sorry, you were frozen. Say that again, please.
I think I've got a hurricane coming through. It's Florida.
We were just saying, how did you start to get to work with Oliver North? Like, how did your book writing accelerate into that and doing that co-writing?
Yeah, interestingly enough, my first publisher, which was Hachette, my editor, we get done, the manuscript's submitted. My first editor is looking it over, and he was Ollie North's editor for a couple of Ollie's books. And he said to me, okay, look, now we need you to have famous people write something nice about your book, a blurb that we can put on the cover of the book. And I said, Gary, everybody that I know that's famous, I put in prison, and I don't think they really have anything nice to say about it. but I said, Ollie North, and I was a Marine, he's a Marine, maybe he would say something nice about the book. So Ollie wrote a very nice blurb for the book. I will admit that with my book, the writing may not be very good, but I deserve an award for the blurbs that I got, because I reached out to Vince Flynn, one of my favorite fiction authors.
One of mine too. One of mine.
He's since passed, but I reached out to him. Kind of as an aside, Vince Flynn's literature was very popular in the Marine Corps and in the FBI. Yeah. And I had a younger agent one time tell me that I was sort of an old, ugly Mitch Rapp, who was Vince Flynn.
But I loved Mitch. I love Mitch.
And I said, you know what? I will take that as the highest compliment. So
huge. So if anybody's never read any of the Vince Flynn books, and I grew up with, those were, my father turned me on to it. You start at the beginning and just keep on going. I mean, I met him at a book signing book signing place in Scottsdale before he passed away. And I said, dude, you've got some friends in the Black Ops. Because just the things that he's just like, because you'll see stuff that it's just like, oh, that could happen. But yes, Mitch Schrapp. Yes.
So I got Vince Flynn. I had done a little bit of consulting work for Law and Order SVU. So I actually reached out and got Mariska Hargitay to write something nice about the book. I just through his fan club got a hold of Michael Connelly, and he wrote a very nice blurb. But maybe one of my favorite blurbs came from Charlie Daniels. And
from who?
Charlie Daniels.
Wow. Charlie Daniels, who
that works.
wrote, he's saying devil went down to Georgia and all that. But
Yeah.
what had happened when I worked undercover, just to kind of get it amped up, to kind of get that adrenaline flowing, I would play music, and I would have the bad guys in the car, and I'm through with the bad guys, but just to make it more fun with me, I did. In one case, it was 2 kilos of crystal.
He's breaking up bad for me.
Is that him? Yeah, that's him.
In the front.
Bob, can you hear us? Because you just froze.
My car.
I don't know if you can hear us. Yeah.
If you don't know me by now, you'll never ever know me. And playing that, it got to the point that I even had the prosecutor saying, you got to knock this off because you're making them look stupid. But with Charlie Daniels, he had a song called Uneasy Rider. And it's the story about this long-haired guy that goes into a redneck bar and gets confronted by these rednecks. And he kicks Green Teeth in the shins. And there's a line in it. And I had it cued on my radio, and I was involved in an international arms deal. And for 6 or 7 meetings, every time the bad guy got into my undercover car and I turned the ignition on, it was keyed to this line with Charlie Daniels singing, "Don't you know it? This man's a spy. He's an undercover agent for the FBI."
I love it.
And they never.
That's amazing.
They never caught on. I was testifying in a case in Las Vegas, and we're playing the undercover tape, and I've got Elvis Presley singing in the background, "Fools Rush In." And the defense counsel made a big deal out of me taking advantage of his client and all that. Anyway, I got a hold of Charlie Daniels, just thinking, I don't know whether he would even do anything. Oh, and he wrote this great blurb. He arranged when he came into Southern California, he arranged for Debbie and me to meet him. We went backstage, spent time with him, and it wasn't like a meet and greet. It was like, hey, let's sit down and talk. And
that's cool.
I mean, it was just it was just great. We took a couple of our wounded buddies to go meet him, and we sat in the backstage. And at one point, he's kind of looking. He goes, "Oh my gosh, I got to get out on stage." And so he gets up and goes out.
He's
just an amazing man, an amazing patriot, and it was. I was always very proud of that blurb. So, but the whole point is, I had the book may not be very good, but I think I deserve an award for the great blurbs that I was able to get.
But your publisher said, go get blurbs, and you did. So going into that, bring into about the Wounded Warriors and how involved you are, and then what you're looking at, what you're doing, you're getting involved in now.
Yeah. So our son was a Marine. He did a combat deployment over to Afghanistan. He'd been on active duty for 8 years. I was flying back from DC after I'd retired. And again, I can't remember why I was coming back from DC, but I my second book had just come out. Now that I think about it, I think I was at a book event in DC, and I'm sitting in the exit row next to this lady, and I happened to say, the flight attendant, she's talking to us saying, okay, you've got to, everybody has to say yes, you're willing to take the door off and rescue people and do all this kind of stuff. And she's wearing a lapel pin with the Army, an Army lapel pin. And I just happened to say, oh, is your son in the Army? Do you have someone in the Army? And she goes, no, a passenger gave it to me and I just thought I should do this. Well, I looked to the lady next to me because she says, oh, I should give you a Navy lapel pin. And flight attendant shakes her head, thanks, and walks away. And I just turned to her and I said, oh, do you have somebody in the Navy? And she goes, no, I'm in the Navy. And I said, oh, you are? Where are you stationed? She said, San Diego. And I said, where in San Diego? Balboa Hospital, which is the Navy hospital there. And I said, well, what do you do there? She goes, I run it. She was an admiral that ran Balboa Hospital. And it was like,
oh my gosh.
Holy smokes. So I just said to her, look, my son's a Marine, he's on active duty. My second book just came out. I would love to go down and visit with the wounded and pass out books. And she goes, okay, I'll make the arrangements. So I started going down there. Kelle and Christy, I have to tell you, I've shot people, I've been shot at. As we talked earlier, I had a gun pointed to my head. I've been in some pretty dangerous situations. But I think the most difficult thing that I've ever done was to walk into the rooms of these recently wounded guys and seeing some just teenagers that have lost both legs, that are the rest of their lives are going to carry the scars of combat with them. And so I went in there. Sometimes I'd only stay for a minute or two. I mean, it's the same line every time. Hey, I'm Bob Hamer, former Marine, retired FBI agent. Can't sing or dance, but I wrote a book. And I would give them the book. And sometimes, like I said, I would stay in there for a couple minutes, other times for a couple hours. And we'd swap war stories and undercover stories and everything. And I developed some very close relationships with these people. And through that, I wrote one of the books for Ollie North called American Heroes on the Home Front. And it's
which I love. I got it.
Yeah.
Lucy's great.
I think
Great
I have most
stories.
of the books.
Yes, you do.
About some of the people that I met at the hospital. And then most recently, through that work at the hospital, I got involved, Kelle, we were talking about this, with the wheelchair basketball team, WolfPack. And there for a while, I was like the unofficial water boy for the WolfPack basketball team, and include the story about them in this book that I wrote with Ollie North. But I learned about a charity called Homes for Our Troops, and they to date have built 375 ADA, Americans with Disability Act homes. So these homes that have extra wide hallways, extra wide doors, they've got showers that are big enough to roll your wheelchair in. But this is their 20th anniversary. They've commissioned me to write a book about 21 of their recipients that we hope to get out at least possibly by Veterans Day to celebrate the charity. It would be a fundraiser book for the charity, but just to celebrate the lives of these heroes. And
So why have we not heard of this charity? Are they just in California, or are they across?
oh no, they're nationwide.
So why haven't we heard?
Yeah, because I think that
Oh, I
you
guess.
said, before we
I
came
guess
on,
you'll
you
read
oops, sorry.
You don't read the Facebook post, I guess.
Well, I do. I
No.
do. But I'm saying
She's speaking for the masses. I think this is more of,
masses. I read your Facebook post.
yeah, because I feel like, and I think you said this, and I know you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but y'all have built more homes than, and I'm not dissing on any charity who does anything for our veterans, because Lord knows how much Christy and I support, love our veterans and first responders. but that you all have built more homes than Tunnels for Towers, as an example.
Well, I don't know how many Tunnels for Towers have built, and they've done a great job. Gary Sinise Foundation has built a terrific. They've done a terrific job of putting together some houses. I admit that I'm not very cool, and I haven't done too many neat things in my life, but I've introduced two wounded guys to Gary Sinise, and he's built homes for them, and awesome. His foundation has built homes. So Gary has just done a magnificent work there. Yeah. But Homes for Our Troops, 375. You pick where you want to live, and then they will try to. And obviously, they're not going to build a home in Beverly Hills, but they build them all over the country. And so, when I was first approached by them, I got to thinking, and I actually had known 21. It's just an interesting coincidence in numbers of recipients of homes that we have either had at our house for dinner, or I've been to their. They have landscaping days where volunteers go and plant grass and plants and do all the landscaping for the homes before they have the ceremony. But they do a terrific job. And, I'm not a spokesperson or anything like that, but I'm proud of the work that they've done for my heroes.
What's the criteria, or how would someone go about to be a recipient of one of the homes? Great mind, sister.
Well, I was going to go a different way, but it's sort of around the way.
Okay.
Well, the website, I believe, is hfot.com.
Okay.
I think that's what it is. But if you just Google or Bing Homes for Our Troops,
we'll share
it's going to show up.
So the two things. My one question is, how does somebody, because if they build across the nation, how does somebody say, hey, I want to plant flowers, I want to be involved? And secondly, it's scary when we've just mentioned 3 nonprofits that do this, how many vets that we have that are disabled. And it breaks my heart, obviously. But how would somebody, now that I'm moving back to Arizona, how would we, get involved to say, hey, I'd like to be part of this somehow, besides me, screaming it on Facebook and getting donations that way, like I did with Brian Terry and everybody else, but to really get down into the dirt?
Well, I think if you sign up for their mailing list and let them know your location, so they'll know. I mean, obviously I'm on their mailing list, but I will get the notification. In fact, if you live in Southern California in the Fallbrook area, July 13th, if that's a Saturday, there's a landscaping day for a Navy corpsman who lost a leg and is getting a new home, and they'll be doing the landscaping there with the rolling the sod, dumping the mulch, planting plants and everything. So I see them throughout. I know they have a presence at Facebook. I'm not on any other social media sites, but you'll see that they'll have the advertising that there'll be a landscaping day for this. And it's a great opportunity for a community to come together for a club. When I've gone to these different days, you'll have offices that all the office workers come out, or a particular church or a particular charity, like a Boy Scout troop or a Girl Scout troop, something like that.
I love that. I used to years ago, believe it or not, when I first got very, very involved in nonprofits and volunteer work, is I became the first young female president of Kiwanis Club in Scottsdale, and it was because I wanted to be involved in local charity. I wanted to be hands dirty within my community, and what astonished me was people were just writing checks and showing up to meetings, and I'm like, but aren't we a group of volunteers? And so coordinated with other nonprofits. You need volunteers. So same, like, we'll go to the Ronald McDonald House and cook dinner for everybody. will go help do landscaping. I think there's so many ways that people can get involved. And I think the importance of it, and I've also brought this into my corporate America life in the past, was having outreach programs within an organization. I think it is so important to get involved, because what that does for your team building, and just your families, getting out and doing it one time, because I always challenge people. I probably do it once and see the impact that it has on the recipient that is getting the end result of your helping with landscaping, painting a house, whatever the situation is. You will be hooked forever and go, why didn't I do this sooner? Because just giving a little bit of your time and what that does is so important. And of course, I can't scream this enough for our veterans and first responders, particularly our veterans. I saw another horrible article on it today that it just gut wrenches me of how they are not supported. And so many of these nonprofits need to exist to fill the gap. And like you're saying, there's your organizations, there's Tunnels for Towers, there's so many that do it. Nobody's in competition. The fact of the matter is they are all needed to help those in need. And I do encourage everyone to go out, and we'll share the links to all the stuff we've been talking about, and get involved in your local community. Find out about something that's going on and how you can help. And my last thing on this little soapbox trip of mine is I get so tired of people pissing, bitching, and moaning and being a critic of everything, but yet you're not doing anything to help it. So if you want to help make a difference, get out there and do something. Get your hands dirty. It really doesn't take as much time as you think, and you can make a difference by spending some of your time zipping your lip and doing some action. So I will step off my soapbox.
Well, and also, people are like, well, I don't have any money. Well, guess what? None of us. So get your hands dirty. I got nails. I'll get my hands dirty. It just, that is worth all the money, is to just get in there and just do it. It just, that's one of the many reasons why I'm excited to going back home, because there's just so much charity there over where I'm at. And I miss doing that. I miss, because we do these shows and we've met so many wonderful people that have gone through hell and back, whether it's, like with Bob, it wasn't fun. It wasn't fun for you and Debbie, when you'd come home, just knowing that, I hope he comes home. Kevin Donaldson of, trying to do the best with the Suffering podcast, and then with Mike, killing himself. We have to, as who we are, be there for the people that not only have PTSD, but just to be for people.
Like seriously, that's the thing. And this is PTSD Awareness Month. I will say, we had Michael Segru on recently, and he calls it PTSI for injury, post-traumatic stress injury, because disorder has such a negative connotation, which I really do like that, because there is help and hope through it. It isn't a disorder that you have to retain forever and it just feels better, but bringing more emphasis on it. And the fact of the matter is, and it's also Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, and the sadness is with, 22 a day, which they say for veteran first responder suicides daily, which, most statistics that we've looked into are double or triple that number. But PTSD, folks with PTSD are way more apt to commit suicide than those who do not. So there's so many different factors. And it is just a little thing of like, y'all, like, just help people. I don't understand why it's so hard. And it'll get me back on my box of like, quit bitching about stuff and do something to help people. Love what Bob's doing. And there are ways that you can get involved in your community to do the same. So
let's go back to how Bob went to the hospital. And as you said, you spend a few minutes, or you end up spending for hours, because it's just having a conversation with somebody and understanding that they want to hear what you've gone through, so they don't have to remember what they went through. Or for them to share with somebody and have it with empathy of not going, well, you know, people are very judgmental. Christians are the worst. Christians judge Christians.
Okay.
So I know that only too well.
Yeah.
But those of us that are so faith-based, you know, we want to give back.
Yeah, for sure. It is. And I have one other question before we stop and hand it back over to you, Bob, was part of your original visit there and not staying very long because it was difficult to see all the young folks in there and their condition?
No, it was really, they didn't want to talk. I mean, sometimes it was just, sort of a shrug of the shoulders and okay, because there were people that were coming in from either different organizations or continual medical people coming in, and they just wanted to sleep. They just wanted to rest, or they've been through a lot. So I respected that, but I was going back once or twice a week and would maybe drop back in, and the next time I went in there, I would stay the hour or whatever they wanted to do. I was listening to them more than I wasn't there to try to impart wisdom and knowledge and everything. I was just there to let them know that, hey, I'm here.
And they probably didn't know, you know, they probably saw people just showing up because it was for them, it was for the person that's showing up to make them feel better over going there for the patients, the men and women that
just to be there for them and just to listen. So yeah, I mean, that would be a process because I have to trust you before I'm going to start talking to you and know that you're here for the right reasons. What a beautiful thing to do. And quite honestly, that is the thing to say, like, it took your time, but I mean, what a life-changing experience.
Oh, it was for me. And like I said, it was difficult because I was fighting back tears because I'm looking at guys that are as young as my son, or, you know, could have been my son, and seeing these guys and the stories, and kind of getting back to what you were saying, Kelly, well, and Christy too, but you get your hands dirty and you get to know these people and know their stories. It's so easy, one, to sit in the grandstands and boo rather than being out in the arena and actually playing. But then when you get to hear these stories, like of these 21 stories, good example, one of these guys was a Marine who aged out of foster care. What do? I can't afford college, so he joins the Marine Corps. Goes over to Afghanistan, gets blown up, loses a leg. He has since climbed Mount Kilimanjaro.
Oh my gosh!
Just received his master's or his bachelor's degree in kinesiology, and will be starting his master's degree in the fall. Another kid, a good friend of mine, came here when he was 2 years old illegally. His mom brought him across the border. Essentially, he's looking over his shoulder until he's 17. He wants to join the Marine Corps, gets his green card, gets fast-tracked to citizenship, goes over to Afghanistan, gets both legs blown off, and essentially has lost major use of his left arm. I mean, it's easy to sit back and go, oh, you know, these undocumented people, and what are they giving back?
He was a child. It wasn't his choice, you know, but he saw the right way, and then he gave, in a sense, gave his life for our country.
He loves America, and I've seen this. I mean, there were so many stories of one, as I mentioned earlier before we went on the air, a Marine who lost both legs below the knees, and now is a cop.
I love
not the PAO, not the recruiter. He's actually riding patrol in a large department in the United States and gets in foot pursuits. I can't imagine what it's like to get tackled by a guy, chased down in a foot pursuit and tackled, and realize the guy didn't have legs that caught you. It's got to be a little.
I love that. Especially when he can just lift up his pant legs and go,
Yeah.
dude, I've caught you, you know?
He tells a great story because he's been through a lot because of Marine Corps boot camp and then with the injuries, but he's standing at attention during his first day at the police academy, and I guess they call them drill instructors, comes run over yelling at him and tells him to wiggle his toes. And he goes, "Sir, the recruit has no toes."
Oh my God. I actually, as you're telling this story, and I know you told it like right before, part of it right before we came on, I actually think he may be a friend of my brother's, quite honestly.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to look this up now, which is also incredible. Such a small world and so many.
It is a small world.
It is. I mean, especially when you start talking about that. But I love that he's done that. And this will be a little spin because I do want to give a shout out because we did talk about this too with what you're doing, Bob, with our warriors. Is, you know, Christy and I have been huge supporters of Wheelchairs for Warriors. We've had Crystal Lee Larimore, their founder and executive director, on here 2 times. I think Christy met her through her old boss, or that's how the original connection came from. And I just started doing work for Wheelchairs for Warriors, which I'm super pumped by. And it's for the same reason of like, it's just, what can we do to help our warriors who deserve better? Like, they just do. And it's shocking to me how many organizations do exist, but thank God they exist for people who are in the fight for the right reason, because it is a God-led mission for one, but it is also a heartfelt passion, because it is a 24/7 thing to start a nonprofit and do these things to help people, you know, fundraising, doing all of the things. But the reward is so much different. Like we were saying, looking at someone with gratitude when they see what you've gone out of your way to do for them, there is no amount of money that can top that ever.
Oh, I mean, I agree. The friendships that I've been able to make because just last week I had lunch with a guy that lost both legs. Debbie and I laugh when I was still in the FBI and we attended a large church in the Los Angeles area. And this one lady typically sat in front of us at church, and she was attractive, and she had the top joint of her finger missing. And we would kind of look at each other and go, "Oh, how sad that she's such a pretty lady, but she has the top joint of her finger missing." And it got to the point that I would walk into these hospitals, and again, I'm trying to learn sort of the language, sort of like when you go undercover, you got to learn the language of the drug dealer, the gun dealer, or the fence. You know, you learn their language. And I would be sitting around with these wounded guys, and they talk about, "Oh, so and so, you know, he's whining. He had a paper cut, and he's whining." A paper cut was a single amputee below the knee. That was considered a paper cut to these guys. And you would actually walk into the room sometimes, and it's like, "Okay, you've got 2 arms, you got 2 legs. What's wrong with you? Why are you here?" And it's okay. He's paralyzed from the waist down because of a bullet. I mean, but you recognize you're so grateful for what you've got and what these guys have sacrificed for. And again, like I said, these are teenagers. They're early 20s. There was one family that the Marine had lost both legs into the hips. It's called a hip disarticulation. And he and his wife had gotten married a week before he deployed.
Wow.
They didn't live together before they deployed.
Wow.
He got blown up, lost both legs into the hips. So essentially he is just a torso. And she's very attractive. I mean, he's a good looking guy, but my wife and I, when we said for better or for worse, if a week later she would have left me for 6 months to go fight and comes back without legs, I'm not sure I would have said, yeah, for better or for worse. You know, we're both 20. Yeah, we can we can put up with no legs for the next 50 years. I mean, I marveled at the spouses and the children and what they were, what they put up with, because they didn't sign up for this. And the men sort of knew.
Yeah, but
in my
did they
book,
really ever know?
yeah,
Did they
we
really
do
know?
have some female veterans that were wounded, so it's not just the men, but the service member kind of knew what they were signing up for, and the spouses didn't.
And we've
Right,
talked
and-
about that with first respond or
Yeah.
friends that are cops. And I always say that the spouses are amazing people, because also the love. I mean, because you might, the veterans and even the first responders, you've got the PTSD. I mean, you've got that's silent. So you might have an injury. We have Cameron up in Montana that drank water that was contaminated when he was over in Iraq. I mean, you just, like, he didn't lose any limbs, but he lost everything inside of himself. So I'm always just amazed at the spouses, men and women, that just say, better than. It's a tough life.
Well, and I think there's so many different variables, right? And I think, what we have been, I will say, blessed to learn and also share stories from people. It's all the BS too that goes on after the injury, whatever it is, is the paperwork, the BS that, and I'm not saying all VA, because we've had some people who've had great experience. We've had people who've had horrendous experience. Watching that part of it on top of the injury, whatever it is, the continued, because to me, that's just continued emotional abuse. And feeling so isolated, alone, rejected. I mean, all the things. That too is a part that's like, I mean, so difficult. And knowing when for yourself as a spouse or family member, like when do you need to go reach out and get some assistance? Because it is not for the faint of heart. It can be a really rough journey. And it's a shame, but which is why we wanted to have more of these conversations, is sharing people's stories to know, hey, you're not alone. And two, it's also cathartic for all of us to talk about those things. But I think specifically with men, mental health, first responders, veterans, is speaking loud about it and amplifying it, because it's inexcusable how it's not taken care of the way that, I mean, I don't have a solution. I do wish that we would spend more money on them from a federal level, but that's a whole different conversation. So
my dream is that I'd be a bazillionaire and then get everyone we've talked to in the last 61 episodes and all their nonprofits and bring them all together and take care of all the veterans.
Yes,
that's my dream. But I don't see myself becoming a bazillionaire.
Right? You never know. We can put it out there. We should start praying on that, sister.
There you go. God does that. He does answer prayers.
He does.
But because of the connections, they all keep on, overlapping, because it's the same thing. It's just taking care of the people who protect us and who are putting their lives out there for people they don't know. Anyway, that's it.
So, Bob, what now? What plans do you have going forward? What is your next chapter of your own personal book look like?
Probably just go to the bathroom as soon as this.
Might get a phone call.
You mean immediate plans?
Oh, that was pretty. We started on the throne, and now we're ending going to the throne.
There you go.
I just continue to march. I mean, I teach at Liberty University online. I'm still working with these guys with my wounded friends. I'm not, and again, like I'm not affiliated with Home Star Troops. LA North has a great charity called Freedom Alliance, and I've helped with some of their events.
Awesome.
Just reach out. There's Ollie's charity is affiliated with a charity called War Heroes on the Water, and that began with 25 guys doing deep sea fishing trips, and now they're up to like 150 guys. It's a huge tournament where they go out and boats compete against each other with the combat veterans on the boats. And
Love that.
so I mean, as you mentioned, both of you, there are a variety of charities out there that are doing something for the veterans, and I think it's the same way with the law enforcement. I try to help out with local law enforcement agencies if they need them. I speak to groups, law enforcement groups about undercover work. I want to be busy on my terms, not your terms. But if anybody is looking for an old, ugly undercover agent for a really cool assignment, let me know.
I love that.
I've got his phone number.
Yeah.
And then I'll text. Yeah. Well, as always, Bob, it's great to see you. I will now get over to San Diego sooner than later now.
Okay.
I'm only a state away. So anything, Kelly, and then he's got to go to the throne. So we got to.
Yes, we got to make that happen. And yes, I actually am going to be in San Diego at the end of July. I will message you, Bob. So everyone, thank you again for joining us today. Bob, we can't thank you enough for your time and being here. We'll share the links to all the books, charities, and such that we talked about today. And we encourage everyone, get involved somewhere, donate, buy some swag, do whatever. You will be hearing a lot more about Wheelchairs for Warriors out of me for sure. But do get involved. If that's not your jam, find something local and do something in your own community, because together we can make a difference in this world. I believe that wholeheartedly. So until next Tuesday at 1:11 p.m. Eastern Time, remember, we are all on this journey together. And together, I truly do believe